So I think I'm up and running. Let's see. Um, Sound is coming through. Excuse me while I handle the technical stuff. Good. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Nice to see you. Lisa, Karen, hi. Oh my, so many great friends. So good to see you. Thanks for those great comments. I'm just catching them here. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I actually flossed my teeth and everything. It's pretty good. So, just a few more minutes before we begin. Thanks for hanging out there in the meantime. You may be able to hear the sound of a dog hurling itself at the door over here. So, sorry about that. Thanks for that reminder, Sarah. Nice to see you, Nancy. So, I am playing with the new technology here. I'm trying to figure out how the heck one does live streaming. So, I actually have software that captures, streams it over to Facebook. So, so far so good. And it is 7:30, so I think we'll just jump right in. Um, so good to have you here. I want to say a few things before we begin. Normally, what we do in our class on Monday night is say hello to the person to your left and right, behind you, in front of you. That won't be possible, but you can take a moment just to acknowledge everyone who's here online. Welcome wherever you are. It's great to have you here. There's something very cool about being at a meditation and a talk where you don't have to dress up. And there's something very cool about giving a talk where I can give this talk and well, I am wearing pants, but I don't have to. So this is good. So a couple quick things. First of all, if you'd like to be on the mailing list, my mailing list, you can sign up at my website, which gives you updates and all kinds of good stuff like that. Um, this class, which is sponsored by the Insight Meditation Community of Washington and by the Unitarian Church in Arlington, Virginia, we all are offering this freely, so no one's ever denied access to the teachings. So if you feel inspired to make a donation, you can go to my PayPal account, which is jonathanfaust@mac.com, and that would be great. And we kind of split up the proceeds. A reminder too that all of my talks are available online. I have a YouTube channel and podcast and all that good stuff. And what we're trying to do is replicate um, the Monday night experience. So if you would like to, as we're going to be online for a while, if you'd like to do mindful movement, there is a Zoom link on Facebook and in the newsletter going out. You can actually do a 50-minute mindful movement class before you join in here. And if you'd like to join a little group afterward, uh, Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy lead a mindful dialogue group. And it's an opportunity to share about the talk, to just to connect with like-minded people, um, to share about your practice and what's going on in your life. And it's beautifully facilitated by these two. And if you'd like to get onto that, again, you can check the Zoom link either here on Facebook on my page or on the newsletter. So mindful movement beforehand and mindful dialogue after. And I'm in conversation with Ira about having him play piano beforehand, which I know so many people look forward to. So in the future, there may be a separate Zoom link for that. So we are seriously set up here. If you're new to this, my name is Jonathan Foust, and tonight I will be leading a guided meditation followed by a talk. And this meditation, this form of meditation, is very much about being aware of the senses. The senses are in the foreground of your attention. When you're in the body, when you're connected to the senses, you are here, you are now. So we're going to start with a little bit of movement, do some concentration practice, open into more of mindfulness, and move into a kind of more resting in presence. At least that'll be the invitation. And of course, if there's anything that I lead here that doesn't resonate for you, feel free to ignore me. And that's what I do when I'm led, and it doesn't work for me. So I will take no umbrage. And of course, I'll never know because I can't see you. So we are going to, we'll sit for about 25 minutes, and then we'll move into the talk. If you like, you might want to start off by just reaching your arms overhead. You can reach up to the left side and the right side. It's nice to draw your navel in toward your spine to activate the core a little bit. Lift your chin up toward the ceiling. Taking a long deep breath and let out any sounds. And as I like to say, try smiling like they do in the commercials when they wake up in the morning. Big change of your state there. And one of my favorite things to do when you're sitting at a chair, tendency to kind of lose that core lift and begin to slump a little bit. It's a very effective way just to kind of realign a little bit here. Make your hands into the hitchhiker movement. Bring the elbows parallel to your shoulders. Your thumbs are pointing behind you. Actively begin to pull your shoulder blades together and down a little bit. Now, don't go beyond 70 or 75% of your capacity. You're not straining here, so you don't want to feel any particular strain. You just want to kind of take the slack out of the muscles across the front of the body, and you're contracting these muscles that get chronically long. So now what you can do is start breathing in nice and slow to the count of 4 or 5. Exhale slowly to the count of 4 or 5. You might lift the chin up toward the ceiling a little bit. Now, if you hold this for about a minute, you're going to get a nice little reset. So that's probably about 2 more slow, deep breaths. So again, long, deep, slow inhalation. Exhale slowly. Feel that contraction, actively drawing the shoulder blades close together. And now reach the arms up overhead. Once again, lift the chin up toward the ceiling. Let the hands begin to float down and pause here with your hands right about at face level. And here what you can do is close your eyes, relax your fingers and relax your thumbs, and let your awareness just flood into the palms and into the fingers and thumbs. We're going to do a really powerful practice that cultivates concentration and absorption. Imagine that if someone was watching you right now, that they could barely perceive movement. And moving that slowly, let your hands begin a slow motion descent. And the anchor or your focus is on the slow motion movement of the hands, the micro movements of your hands as they flow through space. Relax your lips, relax your tongue. Meditation in motion. Notice the quality of feeling in the palms, any sense of pulse or tingling. Can you feel the space between your fingers? And as your hands slowly begin to make their way down toward your lap, there's no rush, there's no hurry here. Feel this movement from the outward movement of the mind, beginning a shift to the internal. With your eyes closed, this sensing inside. And again, if your palms are still in motion, just stay with that. If your hands have come to a relaxed position, take some time just to relax and feel. Notice the sounds around you. Feel the temperature and the texture, the humidity of the air against your skin. Notice where you feel this next breath the most predominant on the inside. And we'll take some time to begin to soften more intimately into this sense of here and now. And feeling your forehead smooth. Notice if you might be able to soften the little muscles around your eyes. Is it possible to let all expression begin to melt away from your face? And in particular, you might take some time to feel the inside of your mouth. Notice if you could relax your tongue in a way that it fills your lower jaw. Notice if you could relax the root of your tongue down into your throat while simultaneously softening through your jaw. And can you feel the volume of your lips? And sensing now the back of your head and the base of your skull. Is it possible to soften here? In particular, right along the occipital ridge, right at the base of the skull, and sensing down the back of the neck and through the tops of the shoulders. What could relax? What could let go? Could you feel or imagine the weight of your shoulders and the weight of your arms drawing your shoulder blades and shoulders just slightly away from your ears? And can you sense the weight and the volume of your arms down through your elbows and down through your wrists? Could you soften and feel the backs of the hands, and the palms of the hands, the thumbs and fingers? Could you soften and relax the throat, and the lower back and the buttocks? And is it possible to soften and feel here at the belly and the lower abdomen? You may notice the more intimately you can relax here, the more intimately you can detect the slightest movement of the breath, with the belly rising on the inhalation and falling on the exhalation. And can you sense the space between your hip joints? Sensing the floor, the bowl of the pelvis. And now, as if you could sense down through the center of the bones, sensing down through the legs, down through the knees, down through the ankles, and the tops of the feet and the toes, and the soles of the feet and the heels. And can you sense and maybe even embrace this paradox of being both deeply relaxed and at the same time alert? And you might now ever so gently draw your attention to an anchor. For many of us, it will be the anchor of breathing. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now on the inside? Noting how the breath it's effortless, it's free flowing. Some breaths are long, some are short. And you might notice simply the natural movement of the breath where you feel it the most predominant, or you might choose to narrow your attention to a very specific point. Perhaps the sense of the breath right at the nostrils, or at the septum, or at the belly. You might be drawn to explore a different anchor for this meditation. For some, the sounds can be quite potent. Noticing all the sound vibrations as they're happening in real time. Can you actually, for a few moments, experience the sound as vibration? And for others, the sense of aliveness in the palms and fingers and thumbs might be a powerful anchor. The sense of pulse or tingling or vibration here. Whatever anchor you select, let this be in the foreground. Let yourself come back again and again to this direct experience of here and now. You may notice when the mind is far away and you wake up. That can be a moment of celebration. You just woke out of the dream and you are re-arriving in the here and now. And take your time to begin again. Again, relax and feel. And from this place of relaxed alertness, you can gently again re-engage with your anchor. The direct experience of here and now. You might now begin to be aware of your anchor in the foreground, and in the background, a heightened perception of everything that is changing, a sense of the flow or the stream of your experience. And you might sense what it's like to relax your attention on the anchor and broaden and widen your awareness, and noticing everything that is changing. And from time to time, you might inquire, what is happening right now? Name it in a word or two. And then inquire, can I let this be? In these remaining 5 minutes or so, you might refresh your practice. What could relax or soften right now? You might again feel the inside of the mouth and relax the tongue. Feel the volume of the lips. Soften the jaw. Could you again relax through your lower back and buttocks? Softening your belly. And feel the soles of the feet from the inside. Feel the palms and the backs of the hands. Noting how intimately you can experience your anchor, how intimately you might feel the next 3 breaths on the inside. Noting sound vibration, the aliveness in your hands. And you might inquire what it is like to let things be as they are. Deeply relaxed, at the same time alert. Nothing to add to this moment, nothing to take away. But to rest in presence and sense what it's like to let it be. What could relax or soften or let go right now? And what could relax or soften or let go even more than that? And now let all technique fall away. Just relax and feel. And feel the quality of presence, whatever that may mean for you. And you might very, very slowly just begin to lengthen your breath just a little bit and feel the breath on the inside. Where do you feel it? Sensing the space around you. With your eyes closed, you might let your head drift a little bit to the left and to the right, sensing the movement from the inside. And from here, let your body begin to move and stretch in any way that feels good for you as we transition. And you might again reach your arms up overhead and stretch in any way that feels good for you. So welcome back. I don't know about you, but I needed that. I've been wrestling with technology all day. And I just want to wish you well and welcome everyone who is watching this right now. I hope you're feeling safe. I hope you are thriving. There are lots of Dharma talks happening right now that are talking about how to work with the unease in the world right now, and I'll be offering a talk on that. But I thought I would just continue with a series that we've been doing, really looking at what is it that obscures clear seeing. What is it that gets in the way of awakened heart and awakened mind? And last week we talked about the mind state of aversion and ill will. And tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about craving and desire. Last year I was considering buying the new iPad Pro, but I was second guessing myself. Did I really need one? The old one kind of worked okay. But then, of course, the more I looked, the more I saw that, the A12X Bionic chip with the embedded M12 coprocessor, I mean, that's pretty tempting, especially when you compare it to the A10 Fusion chip. I mean, you know what I mean. Who could put up with that lag differential with the pencil? But I kept telling myself, I can go ahead and spend the money, but it's not going to make me happy. And I went ahead and I got it, and you know what? It's made me really, really happy. So there goes that material things will never make you happy thing. As I like to say, some selected Apple products actually will make you eternally happy. But pretty much everywhere else in the universe, there's a basic thing. And part of the Buddha's awakening really was realizing that everyone is looking for happiness in exactly the wrong direction. If you base your happiness on things that are destined to fall away, then it's like building a skyscraper on sand. Last week as well, I talked about this sort of analogy of the Buddha as a physician, of really looking at, well, what is the condition, diagnosing the condition for stress or dissatisfaction, identifying the cause, identifying the release of the cause, and then prescribing a course of treatment. And one of the things I love about these teachings is the analogy like like a pearl on a string of pearls. If you pick up just one pearl, the entire bead, the entire string of beads will come with that one bead. And in that same way, when you pay attention to just this one thing of looking at desire and looking at craving, when you really begin to look at it, you'll begin to see how it's connected to everything. And so to the diagnosis, one of my favorite teachers, Gil Fronsel, is one of the founding teachers of Spirit Rock. He tells the story about his son who was about 6 years old, and it was his birthday. So they had this great birthday party for him. You know, all his friends were there were presents, there was singing, and as they're all singing, you know, happy birthday to him, he just started crying. And he didn't stop crying. And so they took him aside and they said, "Well, what's up?" And he said, "It's going to be a whole year until this happens again." And you know that feeling when you're experiencing something that's just great, and then you begin to feel it slip away. And then the wanting to get that feeling back, that intense desire for pleasure. And that intense desire for pleasure and happiness can create a certain desperation that informs your life, where you're chronically wanting things to be different. You're chronically wanting things to improve, wanting the good stuff to stay, wanting the hard stuff to go away. The wanting, living in wanting, sets up the field for intense dissatisfaction. And so once we set our happiness based on things, it becomes a setup. All you have to do is just think of your body. As I often say, have you ever looked in the mirror and had a negative thought? You know, instantly, not good looking enough, not young enough, not strong enough, not fast enough, not limber enough. Back to wanting things different. And it's interesting when you really begin to look at the nature of wanting and the nature of craving. What we're wanting are the things that please our senses. You know, the experiences that just feel good. But then we're wanting things that will please your mind, certain points of view that you might agree with. Then there are other things that are kind of like pleasing your heart and mind, like rituals. You know, the rituals that calm you, or the belief in magic. And it's an interesting, it reminded me when I thought about this, like this, you know, desire for rituals that make us feel better. There's this great story of someone who went out to start his car in the morning and it wouldn't start. And so he just came back in the house and he loaded the dishwasher. And he went outside and the car started. That was great. But now, before he starts his car, he loads the dishwasher. We have so many unexamined rituals or kind of belief in magic. But we also have a craving for things that reinforce our sense of self. We look for things that reinforce a sense of ourselves as a solid, permanent sense of I and me and mine. So when you look at craving, it's really, really interesting because quite often we're craving things that are right next to each other. We have this desire for things that are so close. I was talking with a friend a while back, and she was talking about going to a peace march back in the 1970s, and you know, kind of presenting herself as this free spirit. And she was looking at herself in the mirror, and she actually was thinking, like, well, are my jeans ripped enough, or are they ripped too much? Tom Peters, in his book In Search of Excellence, has this beautiful observation of how we have a strong desire to fit in, and simultaneously we have a strong desire to stand out. So when you get caught and mired in this wanting mind, it's kind of a morass, and it's kind of a guarantee that a conditional happiness is never very satisfying. And so to the cause, what is it that holds us and keeps us caught? A friend of mine a good while back had told me about a time when he realized that he was caught in a really unhealthy cycle of craving and desire, which we could also describe as addiction. And for him, it was gambling. He'd worked really hard in his life. He'd been very frugal, managing his own money. And of course, there's a wholesome element to this. He was wanting to provide for his family, to take care of the kids' college funds, and his money management was going pretty well for a bit. And then he took a risk, and he made a lot of money, and there was kind of a thrill in that. And then he found he couldn't pull out of this cycle of risk and reward and risk and loss, and he lost a lot of money and felt absolutely sick about it. I think we all have things that we hang on to. And one of the most important elements when we find ourselves kind of lost in endless desire is we fail to look at kind of the inner clench. So I'd like to invite you into a short little meditation. We'll be doing a few reflections during the course of this talk and this next 30 minutes. If you like, you can close your eyes, and you might just think of a challenge that you've gone through today. Perhaps a disappointment, just something difficult. And better yet, you might bring into mind something you're wanting that's not happening. It's not happening to the degree that you want it to. And take a few moments just to sense, is there one thing you can identify for this short little investigation? And if you think about that wanting, or that deep dissatisfaction that you're feeling about this not going the way you want it to, can you sense the attachment? Can you sense what you're holding on to? What is it that you're wanting that's not happening? And you might just sense if you could just feel that on the inside, that both the wanting and the dissatisfaction, and sometimes it's best described as a clench. What is it that you're holding on to? And you might inquire, could you let it go? If you could, would you let it go or just let it be? And you might very gently deepen your breath. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes or you can remain with them closed. Please feel free. No one's watching you. At the root of all dissatisfied craving is some holding on, something you're wanting that's not happening, the inner clench. And there's a real potency in slowing down and just sensing what here is at the heart of this. And could I let it be? Could I let it go? This clench of wanting is an absolute setup, as I shared. And there's the metaphor of the hungry ghost in literature. And the hungry ghosts are these beings that have these big bellies and thin little throats and small mouths. And they're always trying to get full, and they just can't get enough. And when we are lost in this, we are perpetually seeking something that's going to fulfill us. And quite often that inner clench it's implanted really, really early. What early messages did you receive that convinced you that there was something better than what you already were? A sense of being not good enough or not lovable, or maybe you got a message that love is conditional, that you have to earn it or show that you're worthy. What happens then is that we're caught in this cycle of what we could call preferential awareness. If things go my way, everything's fine. And when we live in preferential awareness, it's a setup because we'll never really be satisfied. And these hungry ghosts, they speak of this thirst that can't be quenched. And Pali is described as tanha, the thirst for more and better and different than what's right here. And so the bad news here is that the mind gets caught in preferential awareness. It holds on to what it wants, it craves what it thinks is going to make it happy. And the mind gets distracted by shiny objects. We think these shiny objects are the answer, and that they're the path. And of course, to the degree that you hang on and you cling, you're going to feel commensurate stress and suffering. And for those of us who experience addiction to substances, to gambling, to food, to work, to pornography, to sex, and on, you know what that's all about. That thirst for satisfaction and release is a strong, strong force. Matthew Ricard quoted his teacher as saying, "Most of the things you want for your happiness are the things we monks usually associate with suffering." And Ricard added, "When you go down to the deep root of suffering, you realize that it doesn't look like suffering." And in that sense, we're all addicted to something. It's the nature of the human condition. Suffering and stress and dissatisfaction is a shared human experience. So the bad news is we get caught. We forget, and we base our happiness on things or states or beliefs or anything that reinforces this sense of who we are as this permanent fixture in the universe. And the good news is you can let go. Now, some traditions explore burning that craving out of you in some pretty extreme ways. Meditating on bodies being cremated in open air, reflecting on the decay of the human body. There's a meditation reflecting on the 32 parts of the body, kind of separated from each other. And those meditations they're not so much to build disgust, but they're more about training ourselves to recognize and realize the truth of impermanence, and to see clearly that staking your attention on what is changing is true folly. And just as we have this sense of preferential awareness, we can also cultivate its opposite, of non-preferential awareness. When you look into the nature of desire and attachment, you can see these mechanisms that set this thirst into place. You see that craving and the desire for feeling good is about wanting to feel happy. And happiness is an expression of our highest nature. And yet, happiness based on something that's fleeting will not be satisfying. So then the question becomes, can we let things be as they are? And that points towards something really, really exciting that we'll explore in just a few minutes. So basically, whatever you're holding on to, it's possible to let go. And we know this because when you let go a little, you feel a little bit of ease. You let go a lot, you can feel a lot of ease. But when we're in that state of non-desire, it's really interesting what begins to open up. I always love it at the beach. I love just walking along the beach and looking at people who are staring out at the horizon. And you probably know this when you just see people all lined up and they're all sort of sitting there like this. They're just in this big open spaciousness. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the release, about the letting go. And then talk a little bit about what does non-desire, what does that mean? To be without craving, to be without desire. So this friend who realized his gambling issues were controlling his life, realized in sort of great pain that he had to do something about this. And he went to his first meeting. And he went to the meeting so ashamed in his ability to control his cravings and his desire. But at that meeting, he told me of how he heard from others about their suffering. And it began to remind him that he wasn't alone. And he began to hear from others how they started their journey, utterly lost, and began to find healing in letting go. And he left that meeting thinking for the first time, I can be free of this. It's possible. That shift of recognizing that he wasn't alone in his suffering in that cycle of craving and desire opened up all kinds of new possibilities for him. And I said, what was it that really made the difference for you? And he said, first, remembering that I'm not alone. And he began to draw on this resource of community and connection and love. And he also remembered that something in that craving that he had was wholesome. He wanted to feel safe. He wanted to be a good provider. He wanted to be seen as a good person who was improving his family's life. And remembering that he had alternatives, that he could shift the frame of his view when he'd find himself fixating again. And now that he's sponsoring other people, so much of his life has been transformed. Really recognizing that, again, that stress and dissatisfaction and craving and that response to that thirst, it happens to everyone. It's not personal. And realizing that when we can look for the cause and look for the clench, to look at what it is that you really, really want, can be the key to beginning to turn things around. And then to look at all the strategies of how you can remember and remind yourself that you actually can let go. So when we're not aware, our entire life is run by desire and craving. Some of it's quite natural. You're thirsty. You have to go to the bathroom. They're sort of like the impulses from the body. But of course, then the mind kind of goes into making up stories about all these things that are going to make us happy. And it's a barrage of constant desires. And yet we can actually play with this a little bit in practice. And I'd like to share with you a little meditation that can be, I think you'll find it interesting. I find it really, really helpful for me. So if you like, you can close your eyes. This will be just for a few minutes. Take in a nice, long, slow, deep breath and hold the breath for a moment. And then gently exhale. And then again, a nice, long, slow, deep breath in. Hold the breath for a moment. And as you exhale now, just sense what could relax, what could let go. And then again, a nice, long, deep inhalation. And relax on the out breath. And take a moment, or take these moments here, just to relax and to feel. And let yourself just explore this question. Who are you in the absence of desire? And for the next minute or so, let yourself explore, what is your experience inside if you could let things be exactly as they are? You may notice that things come and things go. And again, can you let these things be just as they are? And very gently now, you can begin to deepen your breath. If you'd like, you can open your eyes, or you can remain with your eyes closed. What a powerful question. Who are you in the absence of wanting your experience to be different than how it is? This has been a really personal part of my practice these days. As a good friend of mine suggested, maybe enlightenment is simply being without desire, that capacity to let things be just as they are. And one of my favorite experiments is, as I go paddling on the Potomac most mornings, I paddle pretty hard upriver, but then when I come back, when I can just float back, I kind of do an open-eyed meditation. And when I ask myself, can I let things be as they are? Something really interesting, and it's so alive on the river because birds come, birds go, a beaver tail slaps on the water, a cloud goes by, a plane comes by, and I realize this entire universe is just happening all by itself. I don't have to do a thing other than be awake to it. And those are these glimpses of, for me, glimpses of a state of contentment, a state of really, really deep allowing. And that is kind of the opposite of tanha, that deep thirst, is contentment, kind of reflecting on the possibility that everything is already okay. Back in my ashram days, in a yoga ashram, we paid a lot of attention to the yamas and niyamas, which are sort of like the ethical guidelines in that particular system. Things you do, things you don't do that support a more wholesome life. And one of our practices was to choose one of these yamas or niyamas, one of these observances or restraints, and just take it on for 30 days. So, and I chose santosh. And the word santosh means contentment. It's really taking on this attitude of right now is perfect. It's a remarkable practice. Mostly it revealed my restlessness and my desire for something different than what was actually happening. But what I found was, with practice, I began to accept what was happening. And there was something in being less reactive to what was happening that allowed me to respond from a different place inside, from more of a place of spontaneity. I always love this quote from Werner Erhard. He said, the quickest way to be happy is to choose what you already have. Now what cooks my noodle when I think about it? So just as my friend who began a 12-step process with gambling talked about, it was all about remembering, remembering that he's not alone, remembering that there are people who are also struggling, remembering to look at the root and the core of his craving, remembering to bring kindness to it, remembering that helping others helps himself. This is a practice of remembering. This breath-based practice that we do. It's called anapanasati. Anapana refers to the breath, and sati means remembering. And this is the path of remembering. Of course we forget. But when we remember, if just for a moment, just for a glimpse, there can be a re-arriving. So we forget that things change, but we can remember. We can forget that the more you grasp onto the rope, the more you're going to get rope burn. But we can remember to loosen our grip and sense what it means to let things be. So the question of remembering is really what this is all about. So this whole idea of resting without desire, just inquiring into what it means to be without desire has been real fascination for me. It gives me just these kind of glimpses. On the one hand, it kind of amplifies my wanting, craving mind. But on the other hand, it sort of gives me a little more insight into where the attachment is. Like, what is it that I'm really, really, really wanting? And this becomes such an important part of the practice. But it also, when you start to look at letting go of desire, it can bring up anxiety. What would happen if I let go of desire and craving? I actually, in the day 5 of a 30-day experiment in completely getting off caffeine, and Tara sent me a little cartoon of these 2 ragged men sitting on a street corner, in really disheveled clothes. And one said, I had my own jet, I had a villa in the Alps, I had 2 companies, and then I switched to decaf. For many of us, we have this drive which keeps us juiced in life. To have strong desires, to have goals can be a really, really helpful thing. As I've explored getting off coffee and caffeine, it really does bring up fears of how long will it be before I'm on food stamps. But I'm also sensing if we let go of desire, unwholesome desire, there can be a deep ease of that clench. And perhaps what might arise from there will be something that feels wholesome. Because there is wholesome forms of desire. Desire is not necessarily a bad thing. But some desire and craving can have a beautiful quality to it. The desire to be awake in your life. The desire to cultivate that sense of happiness regardless of the externals. The desire to live a life in alignment with your heart. The desire to have a positive impact on the people that you love. The desire to leave this world more whole than when you arrived. Those can be really wholesome desires. But as we play around with non-desire, it also kind of brings up what are called the near enemies. When you sense, okay, what if things are actually fine as they are? Well, that can usher in something that kind of looks like it, but it's not really it, which can be indifference or complacency. or premature transcendence. Oh, it's all fine, when it's really not. This becomes a really tricky business. And when we begin to really explore, again, to the diagnosis, finding the cause, the release, and the path to healing, in essence, it's remembering that all of us are inflicted with craving and desire as part of the human nature. To forget and to place our happiness on conditioned things, on states, on things that reinforce a false sense of who we truly are. That's utterly natural. And when we have the courage to really look at the clench that underlies that attachment, it can begin to open up the possibility of release and letting go. And part of the remedy is meditation, practicing non-judging awareness. And as you've no doubt noted in your practice, as I have in mine, that the gap between stimulus and response begins to open up a little bit. And rather than reacting unconsciously to a desire, we can pause and say, what is this all about? What am I really, really wanting here? Cultivating self-awareness, cultivating your capacity for remembering, and most of all, cultivating compassion for ourselves when we forget. Ajahn Sumedho said this: desire can be compared to fire. If we grasp fire, what happens? Does it lead to happiness? If we say, oh, look at that beautiful fire. Look at the beautiful colors. I love red and orange. They're my favorite colors. And then grasp it, we would find a certain amount of suffering entering the body. And then if we were to contemplate the cause of that suffering, we would discover it was a result of having grasped that fire. On that information, we would hopefully then let go of the fire. Once we let the fire go, then we know that it is something not to be attached to. This doesn't mean we have to hate it or put it out. We can enjoy fire, can't we? It's nice having a fire. It keeps the room warm, but we do not have to burn ourselves in it. So desire and craving, unexamined, will set you up to pursue things that ultimately can't be fulfilled. The more you hold on to something you desire and crave, a feeling, a point of view, particular rules, you're setting up a whole mechanism of attachment. But when the moments of desire and craving are suspended, there can be these glimpses, these precious moments of seeing clearly. The sense that you can let go or let be. And again, you've done it before, you know what it feels like. Desire and craving cannot be eliminated. Your body has needs, your heart has needs, your mind has needs, but how you relate to those desires determines how free you're going to feel in your life. And what helps you to return back to presence, to open to the field of infinite possibility, is remembering that all conditioned things are going to change. That true happiness arises when you can be experiencing that happiness that is independent of external conditions. You can increase your happiness by seeing into the nature of how reality really works. And that is what this path points to. The possibility of being in our lives, being in your commitments and your responsibilities and your contracts. In this world, confusing world of desire and fear and anger and blame, and to find a steady place inside. Let's take a few moments or a few minutes. We'll close with a little meditation. You might take a few slow, deep breaths. And notice where you feel the breath on the inside. And you might sense how when the mind is filled with desire and craving and attachment, that it is impossible to see clearly. And sense how in this life it can be so helpful to remember that craving and desire has at its roots some deep form of clinging, some deep form of attachment. And when you can stop and sense and feel that and acknowledge that, when you can find a way to see it clearly and to sense what it's like to bring loving presence into this inquiry, to bring compassion or kindness or empathy, to reflect on how all beings share this phenomena of being caught in desire and craving. And to sense what it's like to sense these two wings of seeing it clearly. Sensing what it means or what it feels like to hold it in loving presence. And to sense the possibility, maybe not even of letting it go, but of letting it be. And you might take a moment just to sense who you are in the absence of wanting. The possibility that everything is already okay, just as it is. And you might bring into mind someone you know who may be struggling with strong desire or craving or addiction. Or someone who may simply be struggling at this time. And take a few moments just to sense them. What do you imagine they are feeling right now? What they're needing or what they're wanting? And as you would wish them well, you might wish yourself well in your journey. And in these final moments, just sensing how all of us, all around this planet, are seeking the happiness that is beyond the happiness based on conditioned things. And take these moments in your own way to wish all beings well. May all feel happy. May all feel safe from inner and outer harm. May all feel free from suffering. And very gently in your own time, you might deepen and lengthen your breath. As you're ready, you can open the eyes. You might take a look around the space that you're in. Thank you so much for your time and attention. May you and your craving mind have a wonderful evening together. Also, just to let you know that if you'd like to join the Mindful Dialogue group hosted by Ray and Tara Cassidy, you can find that link on this Facebook page or in the newsletter that I sent out if you're wanting to kind of connect with some really wonderful people. That is available for you. Thank you again. I wish you well. Thank you again for your time and attention. My only challenge now is I have no idea how to turn live streaming off.